Research is a hi-hat word that scares a lot of people. It needn't. It's rather simple. Essentially, research is nothing but a state of mind, a friendly, welcoming attitude towards change. Going out to look for change instead of waiting for it to come. Research is an effort to do things better and not to be caught asleep at the switch. It is the problem-solving mind as contrasted with the let well enough alone mind. It is the tomorrow mind instead of the yesterday mind. Charles Kettering. Let's begin by thinking about the role of a teacher in a classroom. These 4 words, persistence, imagination, achievement, and success, are things I hope for all of my students. According to the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, teachers should encourage student participation in classroom discourse through higher order questioning, student clarification and justification of ideas, and listening and responding to students' ideas. As teachers, it is our job to assist students in constructing knowledge. According to Erdogan and Campbell from a 2008 article dealing with differing levels of constructivist teaching practices, construction of knowledge by individuals as sensory data are given meaning in terms of prior knowledge. Learning is an interpretive process involving constructions of individuals and social collaborations. As educators, let's challenge students and give them the materials and scaffolding they need to build beyond the first floor and onto second and third stories. In wanting to create third-story students who can apply information, I believe we must see a shift in the relationship between teachers. An article dealing with higher-order questioning in elementary math classrooms discussed the fact that teaching in the United States has historically been a profession in which teachers in isolation developed best practices without sharing knowledge with others in the profession. We are already targeting this problem through this project, in which we delve into problems we see. So my purpose throughout this research is to provide you guys with information to combat a common classroom problem I saw. The problem I saw in my field experience classroom was that there was zero communication between the teachers and the students, except that which defined procedures and assignment guidelines. The students were working worksheet after worksheet and making no connections between previous lessons or other disciplines or their prior experiences. I noticed my teacher asked very few questions, and the questions posed in assignments were only addressing low levels of knowledge. Thus, my research topic was born: levels of questioning in a 6th grade science classroom based on Bloom's taxonomy. I decided I would take note of questions asked of students during each observed class period, both from teachers and from worksheets or activities, and then later classify those questions based on the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and later compile results to see what level of questioning was being used the majority of the time. Before I go too heavily into results, I want to take a quick look into defining Bloom's taxonomy so we're all on the same basis of how I classified the questions that I observed. I found a textbook in my teacher's classroom entitled Why Didn't I Learn This in College? And was intrigued when I saw that they had a chapter for the incorporation of Bloom's taxonomy in the classroom. I based my classification of questions on the descriptions provided by this text. Knowledge-based questions were those based on observations, recall and remembering. Comprehension dealt with understanding, comparing and contrasting, ordering, grouping, inferring causes, and classifying. Application questions were those based on concept testing and inferring feelings or outcomes. Analysis questions involved questioning or anticipation. Evaluating challenged students to choose or evaluate between outcomes or processes used. And synthesis was concluding, generating, or creating something from the knowledge gained. An article dealing with the revision of Bloom's taxonomy discusses that originally synthesis and evaluation were switched, and various models you will find will have them inverted. But for the purpose of this project, I think it's more important to define what is a high-level question versus what is a low-level question. Redfield and Rizzo define higher cognitive questions as those that require students to mentally manipulate bits of information previously learned to create or support an answer with logically reasoned evidence. This coincides with Bloom's application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. These researchers define lower cognitive questions as those calling for verbatim recall or recognition of factual information previously read or presented by the teacher. These coincide with Bloom's knowledge and comprehension questions. What is the value in Bloom's taxonomy? Why did I select this tool as the basis of the measurement in my research? In the revision of Bloom's taxonomy, Crathwell discusses that Bloom's taxonomy is so much more than a simple measurement tool. The taxonomy provides a common language about learning goals to facilitate communication across persons, subject matter, and grade levels. The taxonomy can be used as a basis for determining educational goals or a means of determining the congruence of educational objectives, activities, and assessment in a unit, course, or curriculum. What is so important about higher order questioning? Higher order questioning encourages students to think critically. Higher level questions elicit high level responses and is important for future vocational and academic success. Students must develop the ability to think critically, to solve problems, to reason logically, and to communicate ideas. A review of studies by Redfield and Razoo showed gains in achievement when high cognitive questions assumed a predominant role in classroom instruction. Teacher questions engage students in the vicinity of instructional objectives and help move those objectives to the forefront of students' attention, promoting student translation and processing of instructional objectives. Erdogan and Campbell discussed that teacher questions should encourage a wide range of student responses, lead to communication, and allow students to pool experiences, achieving a new level of understanding beyond that which any student has had prior. So what did I see in my classroom? This chart allows you to get an idea of how many total questions were asked during a class period and how many fell under each category. Clearly, my teacher was lacking in challenging students beyond remembering and understanding. I think it is interesting to note that the day that had the most varied question types, March 29th, all the questions were posed by a video students were watching, not by the actual teacher. I think my teacher should have watched this video prior to class and used it as a tool in the lesson rather than as the entire lesson. Instead, asking students the guiding questions herself and providing wait time, allowing discussion and conversation to take place. My observations in my field experience classroom are consistent with the research from Krathwohl, showing that there is a heavy emphasis on objectives requiring only recognition or recall of information and knowledge. Krathwohl goes on to mention that skills ranging from comprehension to synthesis are usually considered the goals of education, pointing out a flaw not only in my field experience classroom, but in a lot of classrooms. Using an alternate way to look at my data, you can see what levels of question are emphasized in my field experience classroom and which were incorporated not at all or very little. Over 50% of the questions asked were knowledge-based and 35% comprehension. It is also worth noting that oftentimes, even though questions may have been of higher levels, my teacher had a way of dumbing it down or modifying it so it didn't challenge students as intended. I think my teacher communicated low expectations of students by giving them the answers to questions that challenged them to apply or analyze information. So I found a lack of higher level questioning in my classroom, and we know the importance of higher level questioning. But the question remains, where do we go from here? What's the next step? How do we incorporate these questions into our classroom more effectively? David Krathwohl, in a revision of Bloom's taxonomy, proposes adding another dimension, knowledge. He defines 4 levels of knowledge: factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. This table would be an excellent teaching tool and allow teachers to classify their objectives, questions, or activities for students. Teachers could then quickly look at the chart to reflect on where they are placing emphasis and where they are possibly missing teaching opportunities. Tony Noble proposed integrating the revised Bloom's taxonomy with Gardner's multiple intelligences to create a planning tool for curriculum differentiation. What she calls the Multiple Intelligence Revised Bloom's Taxonomy Matrix provides a way to suggest learning activities and questions ranging from simple to complex thinking in each of the multiple intelligences. Teachers can use this tool as a way to design learning outcomes and activities so students can demonstrate knowledge on what they understand through different intellectual domains at the same or different levels of cognitive complexity. In response to my field experience and her low expectations of students, I would advise her to use a tool such as this one when planning her lessons. I saw a complete lack of preparation in her lessons and feel that a tool like this one would guide her lessons in a stronger direction. Also, research shows that when students are given a range of creativity and a chance to explore multiple intelligences, they excel, and I think my teacher could have gained insight into students' learning and capabilities and capacities through this tool. This is another great tool I kept encountering in my research because the inner ring contains the 6 levels of knowledge or questioning, the second ring contains activities or verbs that students and teachers could relate to each level, and the outer ring contains ideas of products students can create coinciding with each of the 6 levels. Hypothetically, if I was a supervisor for my field experience teacher, I would suggest that she have a product from each of the levels of knowledge included in her lesson plans ahead of time. I would also suggest she examine her objectives to be sure the verbs she uses in describing student objectives align with various levels of knowledge and are not all the student will define, the student will understand, which is a lot of what I saw. And these objectives reflect the fact that the majority of class time was addressed knowledge and comprehension levels of Bloom's taxonomy. These are my references and the information for the sources I've referred to throughout, and others I may have pulled from but not explicitly mentioned. And I want to leave you with several thoughts. From Albert Einstein: learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is to never stop questioning. From an unknown author: a teacher's purpose is not to create students in his own image, but to develop students who can create their own image. From Joseph Albers: good teaching is more a giving of right questions than a giving of right answers.